Welcome to this special India Hangout. The question we are asking today is based on an interesting comment made by one of our panelists yesterday. It says 100,000 startups, $500 billion in value in 10 years. Is that possible? Say so Mohandas Pai of Manipal Global. Also joining us is Ajit Balakrishnan, a man who made a similar statement a few years ago, and I had the privilege of being on a panel discussion with him. The question we are asking, of course, is all this possible, and if so, what should we be doing and what should we be careful about? So Ajit, let me come back to you. I was just narrating that, you know, we were on a panel I think about 6 or 7 years ago, and you said, is there a possibility, and if I recall correctly, that India can produce 10 companies with $1 billion of value each from the internet, from the internet world? So I mean, have you changed or revised your projection since then?
It's very important that got done last year, year before. The next step is to make sure that, you know, people who invest in startups can write their losses off against the personal income. It's really complicated at the moment. We have, I think we need to set that free. But that will release the enormous amount of angel capital which is waiting in the sidelines. At the moment, it's only a plaything. Not enough people are in venture angel investment. And the third leg of this whole triangle to make entrepreneurship work is to make sure that there are domestic venture capital funds. If you recall, in the United States, all this took off in the mid-80s, 1986, I think, when I think the authorities there allowed the big pension funds to put 5 or 6% of the corpus into what they call alternative investments. We need to do that with UTI and Provident Fund, etc., etc. Then probably we could create 100 to 200 venture capital funds, each with 1,000 crores each, and that will make things really go. So there is some bit of work to clean up on the institutional front. Entrepreneurs have plenty of entrepreneurs waiting.
Right. So Ajit, if I heard you right, you said so tax and funds themselves are not hurdles, but these are issues that we have to work on, and the tax regime has to be made friendlier. Mohan, you know, you're also part of the whole SEBI committee to create the new IPO platform for entrepreneurial companies or startups. Now, is the environment as such ready for this kind of a world where we are saying that the number of startups could accelerate vastly? There is a huge amount of capital that could come in, and therefore we need to be institutionally ready for it.
You know, it's very important we can get institutions ready in no time. I think all the 3 steps that I talked to you, I think if a few of us go and talk to people in Delhi, we can get it done in the next 6 months' time. The important thing is young Indians, you know, who are coming out of top educational institutions, very well taught, very well educated. Many of them today see an entrepreneur's job as something to aspire to. It was far different in the early 70s when I graduated from IIM. I mean, only the guys who failed in your class would ever think of going and starting something on their own. That changed with the success of the IT industry in the 90s. And you know, the work of people like you, Govind, the business channels, Business India, Business World, created heroes out of entrepreneurs. So the social climate changed very dramatically in the 90s. So all of that is coming to fruition today.
You know, you're sitting on a SEBI panel to revamp norms for, you know, entrepreneurial ventures or startups. What's your sense? How ready are we as a system or a government or a regulatory framework to really respond to the needs of these kind of ambitions, including the kind that you've outlined?
Who is this question addressed to? I'm sorry. Hello, who did you address this question?
Yeah, this question is for Mohan, Ajit.
Mohan, okay.
Okay. Well, you know, I had the primary markets panel for SEBI, and our committee came out with a startup regulations, which I think has been welcomed. It is based upon the NASDAQ requirements, very, very liberal. When we discussed SEBI, SEBI was inclined to have a separate platform for them because they felt carving out of the main platform is going to be difficult. And we spoke to many companies. I think we're stemming the outflow of companies to other jurisdictions right now, because many companies are saying, why should you go overseas for listing or for bought outs and all that when you can do it here itself? We have this great market here with the high PE for growth companies, and there are many investors here. So I think we stemmed the outflow. We heard that many companies are now evaluating and trying to come and list in this bourse. We could see them in the next 2 or 3 months. Sharal Sharma and his people at iSpirit are working on this. They identified many companies. They're speaking to them. So I think very hopeful. But what I'm very pleased about is that Chairman U.K. Sinha was so very open, so very proactive, that he made sure that the regulations came in 6 months after his first visit. Not in 6 months, maybe 4 months after his first visit to Bangalore to meet the startup community. Then we had Dr. Raghuram Rajan come to Bangalore and meet them, and he promised to ease the conditions of doing business in foreign regulations, because foreign regulations are a pain for small companies, because if they have to be acquired, they have to go out and they have to operate. It's very difficult. And then we had Rajiv Maharishi, the finance secretary, come in, and we told them about all the tax issues and all other issues, and he promised to have a look at it. And Rajiv told us that the meeting in which he spent 5.5 hours was the most exhilarating meeting in his life. Because
right, okay. Mohan, I think we've lost you for a moment there. Ajit, are you there? Okay, great. So we're going to come back in some time while we figure out what's happened to both of our guests. But interesting points from both Ajit and Mohan. One is Mohan is not just sticking to his calculations, but he's actually boosting them from $500 billion of value to $1 trillion of value, 100,000 startups in 10 years. Ajit says that the regulatory environment is something that's coming into place and is falling into place, but it still needs work. And of course, we need more incentives when it comes to domestic capital and domestic venture funds getting a clear leg up. And once that happens, all of this will really start flowing. So we need to go in for a break here. And before we proceed, okay, let's get Mohan. Sorry, I think we lost you for a moment. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm just saying that the people, all the people are very positive. Chairman U.K. Sinha, Governor Raghuram Rajan, Finance Secretary Rajiv Maharishi, the minister in Delhi too, the secretaries in Delhi, everybody is positive about this industry, because they all know that the current government's commitment to create jobs will rest on this, because we estimate 3 million jobs will be created over the next 10 years in startups alone. And right now, I would estimate about 75 to 80,000 jobs have been created every year in startups. And I think there's an enormous amount of jobs for the middle class. And along with the IT industry chugging along at 10, 12, 14%, and the startups, we could see maybe 300,000 to 400,000 good jobs being created within this industry in the next couple of years on an annual basis. And I think that is unbelievable.
Mohan, so Ajit, let me ask you the other side of the question, right? So you did say that, when you passed out from IIM, I mean, those days, entrepreneurship is clearly not the first choice for most people. Now, today, of course, it is. But could we be heading to the other end of the spectrum, wherein people jumping into it because, for the same reasons that, it suddenly looks so juicy and so attractive, and people may not be ready for it?
Well, the statistics, as I'm deeply involved in the IIM, IIT system even today, of a graduating class this year, for example, less than 5% are becoming entrepreneurs straight after graduation. So the numbers are not that big as yet, but every one of them, practically everyone, I spend a lot of time with these youngsters, every one of them harbors a desire. So I think they want to go out, learn a few things for 2 or 3 or 4, 5 years, and then do something of their own. So I think it's a social presence drive. And don't forget, one of the reasons the policymakers have suddenly got enthusiastic with all this is that I think the estimate I've heard in Delhi is about 8 to 10 million young people are coming of age and entering the job market every year. Okay, that frightens frightens any politician, any national leader, because the real issue is that everyone thought manufacturing is going to give you the jobs. But I can tell you today, you can set up a $500 million manufacturing unit which may employ only 800 PhDs and no real industrial workers. So they're discovering that creating smart jobs for people with the manufacturing route is not as easy as it used to be. So there are very many reasons that there will be support by policymakers. Right. For startup culture, very many.
Right. So, Mohan, are you also? Let me ask the same question. Really. So, are we likely to swing to the other end, where we become overconfident, over exuberant, and assume that you get into a startup, money will come flowing in and everything will be hunky-dory?
Well, going first, I want to give some data. Ajit, 20 years back, we produced 25 million babies, all right? And all those babies are now going to attain the age of majority. If you assume 25% of them will get married or go to agriculture because it's coming down, and there's 18 million people are going to come in the job force, not 8 million, 18 million. It's an enormous number. And
the numbers are it's some number which is frightening. I mean,
even frightening.
It's now, frightening. You will have revolution in the streets. You will have a revolution.
Yeah. Absolutely. And is there irrational exuberance? Is everybody thinking they're going to be a millionaire? Well, the hope is there, and everybody wants to do it, but they all know many are going to fail because they can talk to all their colleagues and they know that many are not doing well, they'll fail. But the good thing is, the failure itself is becoming an education for them because they fail here, they go elsewhere, and the experience they get of building a startup, doing a startup, working 24/7, trying to market, trying to raise money, getting customers, product development, etc. for a lot of them, is such a fantastic experience that later in their lives, even if they fail, they go elsewhere in the work, they're much, much better people they would be than if they're not done it. Yes, failure is going to be an acceptable part of life for all of us in the future because of this lost experimentation.
Right.
So I want to end by saying the scope is enhanced. Although the scope was not there, the scope is enhanced. So you fail in one, you go elsewhere, and the multiple approaches available for you. And I'm sure startups in future are going to hire people who have gone through the experience and failed because they don't want to repeat the same mistakes.
Okay. Mohan, I've got some questions coming in as well. So what is the kind of skew that you see? I mean, when you talk about so many startups, are you thinking of any particular set of industries? And Ajit, I'll come to you in a moment on that as well. What's going to dominate the trend here?
B2C seems to be dominating because B2C, the value chain is very inefficient. The supply chain cost in India 14% of GDP. China is 6 and America is 5. So if you make the supply chain efficient and connect the consumers with the producers, then it's time to make goods. So there's a lot of B2C, but I see a lot of B2B high-tech companies coming, trying to make businesses much more efficient, getting all the products online, selling in India, selling overseas. I see companies coming with products for farm to fork, like they say. I see companies coming for getting the handicapped craftsmen to market. And I see people coming with healthcare, with education, with in the supply chain agreement, the supply chain area, e-commerce. You name the area, they're all there. The companies creating drones, leveraging technology, high-tech manufacturing, 3D printing with designs. And the 3D design company in Bangalore, where if you go tell them what you want, they'll do a CAD/CAM design and everything and get it done on 3D for you within a short period of time. So very wide range of industries. But the bottom line is, in all of them, they're leveraging technology and in all its manifestations.
Ajit, what's your sense? I mean, where do you see opportunities and then potentially where the entrepreneurship could be or the funds could flow?
Yeah, I think before I talk about the opportunities, I want to add one little bit again on the policy front. You talked about possible failures. We know from experience that 8 out of 10 startups will end up being a failure. It's a reality of life. Now, there again, we need some policy initiatives to make sure that bankruptcy laws are streamlined. Today, when a person fails in the business, the consequences are horrendous. So we need a Chapter 11 type system which makes it simple, efficient, and limits the liability to the entrepreneur. In the United States, for example, there are many states which prohibit the pledging of a primary home. It's illegal for a bank to ask for and get a pledge. I know many young entrepreneurs in the last 10 years who persuaded the parents to pledge the primary home and then were destitute when something fails. So, in doing all of this, there is some policy tuning we need to do. All young people go out and start a business hoping for success, but some will fail, and we cannot have a society where half the people try to fail and reach bad ends. So there is some policy stuff to do. Next, you asked me about what are the industries. I think there is enormous opportunities across. Most of the current excitement is about disintermediating the distribution chain, both on the supply side and on the delivery side, the so-called e-commerce business. That has some place to go still, but there are opportunities in manufacturing and design and medical care delivery. There are unlimited opportunities if you look at it now. If you are 20 today, look out into the world. Unlimited.
Opportunities across the spectrum, not necessarily confined only to e-commerce. So this is the message I'm taking from both of you. Mohan, as we sort of start wrapping up, many entrepreneurs will be listening to this, as they would have heard you in many other fora. Now, what are the three things that they should think of before jumping into something? Is there almost like a rule book? One is assuming, let's say you are feeling excited, confident, and you want to get in, but what are, there should be something that you must check off before you actually get in.
Oh, I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Let me start with you, Ajit. I'll come to you after that.
Yeah. Who will start, Mohan? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, going, the first thing you must do is to identify clearly the problem that you're going to solve and get into detailing it, processing it, finding out how you get a competitive advantage, etc. And the second thing you got to do is just test it out and make sure that it works in the beta release all over the place. And the third thing you got to do is to have perseverance to make it last, to make sure that it actually succeeds. And if you find that it's not succeeding after doing work for a particular period of time, then you must be flexible enough to change as per market circumstances and revisit your original thesis. So I think focus, detailing, perseverance, flexibility, these are the key attributes of a successful startup.
Mohan, let me ask you a question slightly differently. Looking at the startups that either you've been directly involved with or you've seen, which is the area that you've seen a weakness?
Well, the weakness that I see clearly in all of them is everybody thinks that life is an algorithm. Okay, it is a spreadsheet where things keep going up and up and up and up, and they don't think that anything has to be done. Just keep plugging things that are going to happen. So I caution them that reality is brutal, reality is life, and just try to be paranoid and make sure that you understand the reality and make corrections in the way you're going, but keep going and don't think it's an up and up and up and up. Be prepared for adversity and keep the cash in the bank, be very frugal, and then you'll succeed.
Okay, Ajit, what if I were to ask you for 2 or 3 key sort of points to check off before you actually plunge in?
I think particularly in the information age type businesses, there ought to be some originality in how you create it, how you deliver the product. There has to be some originality in the business design. One of the two. It's hard to do a Me Too business and succeed, though it has happened. Even in the IT services industry, the original pioneers are not the ones who succeeded. People who copied the models became very big. So it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. But if there's one message, I think, don't give up. Don't give up, because in an entrepreneur's life, every day you wake up every morning with a new set of challenges. And it's important that you take that punches with a smile and don't give up. That's the main message.
Right. Okay. So, Mohan, last but one word. I mean, we started by asking you 100,000 startups, $500 billion in value in 10 years. Do you have a revised projection already?
No, I want to wait till something happens there. Once we reach $200 billion and possibly 1 million people employed, then we'll have a chat again on Google and we'll raise the target publicly.
Okay, got it. Ajit, do you have a projection of sorts? I mean, where could this go?
I think, both from the national viewpoint as well as and from the entrepreneur's viewpoint, I think 8 to 10% of Indians every year coming into the job market, at least 8 to 10% must go and start something up. But they can employ the other 8 or 9. That's so they will succeed. It won't come through manufacturing and all that gas, I promise you.
Right. Okay. So 8% should be starting out something so that they really take care of the other 92% is what, Ajit, if I heard you right.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ajit Balakrishnan of Rediff and Mohan Das Pai of Manipal Global. Thanks so much for putting us, laying out a stretch target, also putting the right cautionary notes, and of course the internal optimism that will hopefully take us all through these numbers. Thank you so much for joining us.